Welcome to a new on-spot review. I am going to talk about Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, the final rebuilt movie. I'm just going to start with just a general review and then I'll get into the spoilery stuff. I will also be doing another discussion video or stream. I haven't really decided yet discussing this movie. I will do that probably in September or so to give enough time for people to watch the movie and for me to watch it a few more times than just the one time I've seen it as of this recording. So let's just get right into it. The recap it starts with is pretty good. It does a good job kind of catching you up on the past three movies. It doesn't feel like it's missing anything. It does a good job kind of bringing you up to date with everything. Uh the animation is outstanding. I really can't think of another animated thing I've seen that stood out this much to me. It really feels like it's going to age very well. I really can't think. I think if we are in like, 100 years from now and you watch this movie, it's going to age just fine. It does such a good job integrating the CG into the animation where you can't really tell for sure what's animated in CG and what's not. It does a good job blending it. I think if you see any other movie that has it, you could kind of tell, okay, this is done by computer, and then this is done by hand. But this is a good job kind of melding the two, so you can't really discern. You can probably guess for sure what is done through a computer and what isn't. But it is a good job kind of blending the two. But yeah, the animation is outstanding. It's fluid. It doesn't feel janky. It is phenomenal. I was just in awe of just the animation itself. I've watched this movie dubbed, so yeah, guys, dubbers rise up. But anyways, I've watched it dubbed. The dub is pretty good. They didn't change the VAs to match the Netflix dub, which is probably for the better because these movies have three movies done with these English actors, so it makes more sense to keep the rebuild cast than to switch it at the last second. So the dub is pretty good. It does a very solid job giving you the story and all that kind of stuff. So the dub is solid. I like the dub. The music is really good. I think this is one of my favorite soundtracks in the movies. Rebuild 1 has a good soundtrack, but I didn't really love it. I liked a lot of the songs that were just callbacks to the original show, while this one does a good job of having new songs and then having songs that were pretty much callbacks to older songs. So I do like that a lot. Uh, so the soundtrack is good, the animation's outstanding, the story is really good. I think the story is my favorite story in the rebuild stories. I might even like it more than the shows. The show is really good. I love the story of the show and all that, but I think the story of this movie really is really good. I think it does a better job tying together the whole movies than the show because you can kind of tell the show kind of changed course as the show went on, while this feels more like it's reintegrating things very well. So I love the story of this a lot. It does a very good job with the pacing as well. It doesn't feel like it drags. Even the scenes you would think would be dragging, it doesn't because everything is used and feels worthwhile. There wasn't a lot of times where I was looking at the runtime or anything. I was just kind of lost. A lot of to compare it to movies like the Batman trilogy that Christopher Nolan did, those movies are very long. And I would say that Batman Begins kind of drags, and then The Dark Knight Rises drags as well, while The Dark Knight Returns feels like it does a better job being a longer movie and just, handling the pacing very well. I think this does even a better job than those. This movie does such a good job like getting through scenes where you just kind of get love what you're seeing. So the pacing is really good. I think is one of the best. If you're gonna do a long movie, the pacing is really gonna be where the movie will make it or break it for some people. And I really think this movie does a good job holding your interest from start to finish. So if I were to rate this movie, I would probably give it a 10 to be honest because it just I just sat through this movie and I can't really think of anything I disliked. I really can't think of anything because I loved everything about it. It really does a good job. I mean, I think the only thing that I like, this would probably be a criticism from anyone else, but this movie doesn't care if you haven't watched the other three movies. You're not gonna get this movie. You're just off the train immediately. The movie does not give a shit. It will just drop you in, and you just have to hope that you've seen the other three movies, or at least remember some of it. But if you haven't seen this movie, you're gonna be completely lost. Uh, there's that going with it, and then there, like, the beginning, it's so hectic, and it gives you a lot of things that they throw at you, a lot of information that you have to kind of process, and it's kind of hard to hear the dialogue sometimes, where it's like, what was that? Because, like, there's all this action going on, and they're giving you all this exposition, all this dialogue at you immediately in the beginning of the movie. It's kind of overwhelming, but the reason why that's not a criticism or a mark against the movie is because that is literally the Ava experience. You're supposed to just be throwing all this information, and it might even be gobbledygook. Like this, like Ava has always had this dialogue that just feels so over important and overly explained, and it's kind of like intentional. Like I feel like you're supposed to just be overwhelmed by the information they're giving to you. So that's why I can't say it's a mark against the movie, because it wouldn't be Ava if it didn't do that. So uh I really loved it for that, and I love that this movie kind of stood on its own. Like, it didn't feel like it was compromised by fan demands. It didn't feel like it felt like, I can't imagine if there was anything cut from this movie. And there has to be some stuff that was cut, because I mean, naturally every movie there's stuff that gets cut that can't make it. But I really can't imagine Ano had to sacrifice any scene. Everything seemed like he put it there, and I feel like someone else would say, you should trim that down. And he was like, no. And he just kept everything as it was. So it feels like the most ideal film that was made that he wanted to make. So it was such a fantastic movie to experience. So I really can't imagine this movie any other way. So to me, it's a perfect movie. It really does everything that I wanted from a director like Ano. Like, this would be something I would want from David Lynch and that kind of stuff. To see a movie that they put out, that's a movie that they want to make, and it's something that's like this intense. So it's a 10. I highly recommend it if you have seen the other three Rebuild movies. And oh, I should also say this as just as a forewarning. I also would recommend to watch the show. Watch the show, watch the Rebuild films, and then watch this film as well. If you haven't seen anything, if you haven't seen the Ava films or show, do that. Start with the show, then get into the Rebuild films, and then there you go. I started with the Rebuild 1, by the way, and I've seen Rebuild 2 and Rebuild 3, and during this wait between Rebuild 3 and this movie, they put Ava on Netflix, so I was able to watch that before this movie. So it was like the perfect thing that happened. So uh, let's let's move on to the spoilery story discussion that I really want to kind of get off my mind. So if you haven't seen the movie, you could bow out, you can leave, watch the movie, watch the show, do all this stuff, then come back, and now you can enjoy this spoiler fest. All right, you've been warned. Okay. So let's get into the spoilery stuff that I really want to get into. I love the beginning of the movie. It starts off just in this fucked up situation. They're in like Euro Nerve, and I was sitting like, Nerve? What? Because in Rebuild 3, it's like established that Nerve is like gone. Like, I think they were saying like Nerve is still pretty much just Gendo and Fudusuki. I'm gonna butcher that guy's name. I've always butchered his name, so I'm sorry. Uh, I've always thought that that was always gonna be Nerve. So, but I guess these are just like they're calling this like the headquarters of Nerve in these other locations. So whatever. Uh, they're still Ville. I feel like they made an error in this movie, because I think they kept calling it Villa, and the Rebuild 3 they called it Ville. So I feel like the voice actors forgot that it was Villa. I don't know. but that's a small thing. I love the commentary on the suits that they're in. Like one of the characters is like, "This is very embarrassing. They should keep these suits for the pilots." But it was kind of interesting to see. Like, I think they were wearing those suits because it was inhabitable where they were, because they're trying to restore uh cities, which is actually a really cool plot development, because I think it because they don't really explain that in Rebuild 3. I think you could kind of either it's alluded to that, or you just are not in the know. But it's kind of not clear if they figure that out in Rebuild 3, or if it's something that they did in between. Because they do mention that Misato and that whole crew like made these little devices to purify areas. So it's kind of hard to gauge if they did this during 3, in between 2 and 3. Like, it's hard to know the timing of that. But even that aside, it's kind of nice to see that, they have a way to kind of revert certain zones to purify it. And I think this also kind of goes into, they talk about like the second impact in Rebuild 1 and all this kind of stuff, and it kind of, and you see how they restore areas. Now, of course, this the way it is now, it's not as perfect as it was back then, and this kind of also plays into the story later on, where Gendo kind of explains uh, that one of the impacts, I think it was I would want to say the second impact, because I can't remember, there was 3 or 4 impacts. There's so many impacts. Uh, I think the second impact was just that the water became red, which he says that it was that the water was purified at that point. Then it was the land that was purified. And I think the land purification was the events of the ending of Rebuild 2. So I do like that it kind of explains why these impacts affect the world the way that they did, because it's like, okay, this impact happened and the sea turns red. What's the next impact gonna do, and all this kind of stuff. So it does a good job kind of, giving you these kind of answers. And that's the other thing about this movie that I really think is interesting. End of Ava and the ending of the show doesn't really take the time to explain anything. It just kind of just gives you throwaway lines like, "Yeah, this is the angels are like also man, we're also angels, but we're different. We can't coexist," and blah blah blah. Like, they kind of brushes all that aside, and it doesn't really explain anything. While this movie explains everything and kind of shows you what they're explaining. Now, it does it in a way that's so overwhelming. It kind of just feels like uh it's Ano just being so spiteful, like, "Oh, you want to know? You want to know? Really? You really want to know? Okay, fuck it. We're just gonna overwhelm you with all this sensory overload." They put all this like information just at your face and in your ears, and it's just like, it kind of paralyzes you and just information. So it just kind of feels like that. It doesn't feel like this. It doesn't feel like, in comparison with MGS4, where it's like, fine, we will fucking explain everything for you, and they just do all this stuff. It's more of just like, yeah, we're gonna explain everything to you, and that's the intention, but we're just gonna fucking overwhelm you with it, with this information. And I think that's the best way to deliver this kind of information for Ava, because Ava is such a convoluted, overwhelming presence of a show that I wouldn't want the explanation to be kind of handed to you like spoon fed. I want it to be just thrown at you, cold like that, because a lot of the times it just really hits you. So that's pretty much the beginning as well. I mean, they don't have Gendo in the beginning, but the beginning just starts. You only see Mari. You don't see any of the characters. You don't see Shinji. You don't see Rei. You don't see Asuka until like later on, and I love that. It's kind of the same impact that the third movie had, which I absolutely loved. Everyone complained about 3, how all of the characters are different. No, everyone hates Shinji and all this stuff. But that's what I loved about it. It made you more engaged and like, what's gonna happen? What's this? And this movie does that same thing, where it's like you turn it on. Sure, it is the recap, but then you just see what's going on. You're just like, whoa, wait, this is going on. Whoa, we're in like Euro Nerve, and they're purifying this area, and then there's all these other fucking mechs showing up with like the spirit of like Longinus in them. Like, what? And I just love the overload that they give you, and just the amount of like dialogue. Like, they're on these computers, and they're talking about how the language isn't like exact and how it's like hard to decipher and all this stuff. Ate that shit up. It's like this is gonna be so rewarding to rewatch it multiple times just so you know what's going on. I just I just loved it for that it just did not feel compromising at all in what it was telling you. And the fact that we had to wait so long to see Shinji and the other three pilots was really interesting because like every movie wants you to see the main characters immediately, and here it's like no, you're just gonna see like the side characters, and Mari is there, but that's not the focus. Like they made sure that you see her, but then they like it just pans away and it just focuses on Ritsuko and these other like side characters. I also love that it keeps talking about the events of 3 with Shinji and all that and the events of 2, like, usually, especially with a movie with this long of a development, you would think that there'd be stuff that's lost, like some continuity that's not carried over or anything, let alone them referencing the second movie and even the first movie. So that's, like, insane that this movie still, like, hangs with all that continuity. And it plays into the one of the many core themes of this movie where it's about atonement and about you know, you the things you do might hurt people indirectly, but it's not like Shinji did it out of malice or that he was doing it with the intent of hurting people. He did something that was the right call, but it caused pain as well. And this is something that I really loved. I feel like a lot of stories can't like they never want to own this message of there's no good decision that will be painless. Every decision can lead to pain, and you need to accept that, and you need to like, that might happen, and then you have to like amend that. It's not about like saying, yeah, my decision might hurt people. Yeah, okay. And then like absolving that. It's more like, yeah, you're doing this and you're gonna have to repay that consequence. You're gonna have to own that consequence. You're gonna have to like address it. You can't just expect that the good that you did is gonna outweigh the pain. And this movie does goes out of its way to do that. And it also like it affects the viewer. So after you see the beginning and they do all that crazy shit, it goes back to it finally gets to Shinji and Asuka and Rei where they get picked up by Mysterious Face, which is I think it's the guy with the glasses. I can't remember his name. I never remember his name. But but then you see Toji as an adult, and it's like and it's a great psych out because in Rebuild 3 it kind of teases that Toji died. It because Ikari gives Shinji a shirt that had Toji's name on it. So you're like, oh shit, did Toji die? And then you see him now, and he's like, oh no, he's an adult. He didn't die or anything. And that was done intentionally. I feel like this now. This part of the movie kind of goes into a theory I have. So this is the theory I have as for the name. Everyone doesn't know why the name is so weird. It breaks the tradition pretty much. Like Rebuild 1 is 1.1, Rebuild 2 is Rebuild 2.22. Well, the other one is 1.11. Then the third movie is 3.33. This one is the only one that doesn't that it isn't 4.44. It's 3.0 plus 1.0. And I think honestly that's because the structure of the story is it's evoking stuff from one, which is the scene that we're just going to be talking about, and then the second half of the movie is stuff that's continuing from 3. So it's kind of this intermediate kind of film where it just kind of feels like it's taking vibes from these two movies and adding them together. And that's what you get from this movie. Like it has the vibes of the first movie where you have this calm like day-to-day life where you see Shinji, Asuka and Rei live in a community that's thriving. There's work, there's kids, there's all this stuff. Like that's the literally the vibes of the first movie and a little bit of the second movie, but mostly the first. And then like once they leave that area, it's okay. Now we're doing like Ava shit. Now we're talking about like all this like uh fucked up shit that you have to take care of and all that. Like it just throws that in. And that is literally the vibe of 3. Like, it just kind of drops you in. So I really like that this movie took the time to do this little everyday life situation, and it feels worthwhile because it plays a very significant role in character development. And I think this is the one thing that a lot of movies have a hard time doing, because it's hard to do a decent arc for characters in movies because you have such a small amount of time to convey a lot. You can't really have a good hero's journey in a movie because you have an hour to do it, an hour to 2 hours to do it. And this movie does it. Like, you see, like, Shinji is a mute pretty much. He's so depressed at the actions he did because he feels so regretful, and like he really feels like that he fucked up because he caused so much pain. And even though he caused so much pain, he caused a lot of people to survive out of it. Like, the thing he did was bad, but at the same time, a lot of good came from that bad decision. And all these people are telling him, like, we owe you. Without you, this wouldn't have happened. And it's like, everyone, like even the viewers kind of felt the same wavelength as like Masato in 3, where everyone in 3 hated Shinji for piloting the Ava, and they're like, you're not piloting it anymore, sit out, you're done, you fucked up and all this stuff. And the viewer, and like when you talk to like fans of Ava, they all hate Shinji as well. Like, Shinji is a shitty character, and he's a shitty person and all this stuff. Like, everyone hates him. And in this movie, it's like Shinji agrees with that, but this universe in this movie loves him. They're like, you did something good. Like, yeah, people died and people got hurt out of it, but like, look what came from it. If you didn't do what you did, like, there could have been no life. There could have been nothing. Uh so I do like that it plays the two sides of, like, the bad of Shinji and the good of what Shinji did. Like, a lot of people weigh the bad the most. Like, a lot of people look at the cost of what he did, but no one really looks at the positive that Shinji has done through those decisions. Because the way that that especially Rebuild 2, it frames it as a selfish decision where he caused the third impact because he wanted to save Rey, which is pretty selfish because he only wanted to bring her back because he liked her. He didn't want to he didn't want her to die. So he brought her back. And then in 3, he wanted to undo what he did, which is why he did it. That's why he did, why that's why he piloted Unit 13 and all that, because he wanted to undo it. He wanted to cause the undo, which it didn't necessarily happen, but at the same time, it caused for all these people to come back and resume their lives and thrive. And still, there are people in this new movie that still hate Shinji because they still have loss. They still have caused pain in their families. Like, that wasn't undone. Like, it wasn't a full redo of what happened. But even then, like, it's about just accepting that, yeah, the decisions Shinji made aren't perfect decisions, but good has come from it, and we have to accept that. We have to accept we as the viewer, and Shinji has to accept that what he did is bad, but also good has come from it. And I think it's very interesting that Ano puts the perspective of Shinji. Like, Shinji's character is how the viewer feels about him. Like, Shinji agrees with the viewer that Shinji is an asshole and he caused pain and all this stuff and he shouldn't pilot an Eva. But the movie goes out of its way to show that there are people who still like him. Like, there's not an impactful scene than the one where Rei starts to open up or reach out to Shinji, which is kind of the opposite. If you look at Rei and Shinji's development in all of the movies, it's always been Shinji trying to reach out to Rei. Rei has been isolated. She doesn't want to talk to other people and all that stuff. She does what she's told. And here, the roles are reversed, which is which is kind of foreshadowing to the ending, which I'll get into as well. But it shows this growth of Rei's character, of this particular Rei, because in 3 it's very clear that this Rey is not the same Rey that Shinji wanted, that he was trying to save. In 2, this is a completely different character, but through this event of living in this community, she starts to understand things. She starts to understand cute. She starts to understand life and work and sweating and all this stuff that she starts to love. Like, she starts to be like, I want to live in this society. I want to live here. I don't want to go anywhere else. If I could just stay here, that would be perfect. And she wants to live that life. And she sees Shinji as this character that's like isolated and doesn't really want to open up anymore because he convinced himself that he hurts everyone, and it would be better if he just died. And Asuka kind of sees that and just tells him, like, you don't want to live, but you don't want to bring yourself to die. Like, he can't decide. He's a very indecisive person. And this is kind of where you start to understand Shinji as a character, where it's not like a character that's very uh straightforward. There is layers to him, but through all this stuff that Rey has learned about this community and about herself, she realizes that, you need to interact with people. Like, you need to, talk to people. You can't just isolate yourself from society and just be a recluse all the time, because you're not going to grow as a person. So when Rey is constantly trying to reach out to Shinji, more and more Shinji starts to open up a little bit more. It starts off with him just, he takes a bite from the ration that Rey brought him, and then he starts talking a little bit more to her. And then the moment that he starts to interact with people again. He starts talking to Toji again. He starts talking to the other guy with the glass. I can't remember his name again. He starts talking to Rey again. Not Rey, Asuka again. And there was a scene with Asuka I do want to bring up. I almost forgot to bring this up. There's a scene where Shinji is just kind of like sleeping on the ground or whatever, and Asuka had enough, so she force feeds him a ration so that he would eat. And I love that part because Asuka just rails on him like, you can't do anything. You're just fishing for sympathy, and everyone is giving you sympathy. You can stand up on your own. Like, she's kind of being harsh, but at the same time, she's kind of giving him, like, it's kind of tough love, but it's also like him, like, it's literally Asuka telling him, like, you can do these things, and you're deciding not to. You're just sitting there. You can do it, and you're just sitting there. And that's like, and she's like sharing her frustrations with him about that. So then she like just walks off, and it's like, whatever. And then so now we go back to that scene where, now instead of Shinji sitting in that ruins area, it's Rei. Is standing there, and also, Shinji just tells her straight up that, like, you're not Rei, you're not Ayanami, you're someone else. And everyone in that village, that community, was telling that Rei the same thing, like, you're someone else. You need to do things for yourself. Like, what do you want to? Don't do what Rei did. Don't do what the previous person did. Do what you want to do. And this is kind of like, through Rei, it's this Rei, I should say. It's kind of Shinji's development that he should be getting, that he's not getting, because Shinji throughout the show kind of lives in his father's shadow, if he likes it or not. And, instead of like Shinji just closing off from everyone, Rei embraces what she's told. Like, she embraces this knowledge of, like, I should explain. I should explore more. I should do things for me and all this stuff. And through this, she kind of confides in Shinji, telling him, like, I need a name. You should name me. Give me a name. And he's like, yeah, you're not an Ayanami and all that. Like, I don't even think they even end giving her a name, or at least telling the viewer her name. But after that, after like all that, Shinji meets up with Rei at that ruins, and that is kind of where you naturally think they can come together and they can be happy now, and it kind of leads to a happy ending. But then Ray starts to walk back, and she starts saying like, this part really did. This movie wrecked me. So I'm still like kind of like processing these emotions about this movie, but she uh she backs away and she's like, I wanted to live. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then she dies. She dies uh and this is just another loss that Shinji had to that he opened up to. Like in 3, he was in a similar place where he was like, I can't pilot an Ava. Ray's not the Ray I want that I thought she was. Like, what did I do? And he started like to become like isolated again. He then confides with Kaoru, and becomes friends with him, and then he dies. And he's kind of forced to relive that same trauma of like losing someone he confided with, and it needed to happen because after that, Shinji still like snapped out of it and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna come with you. Like, take me with you, Asuka. Like to Villa." So even after all of that, like, it's not that he wanted to isolate himself again. It was just that he was willing to accept the punishment of his actions. Like he was like, yeah, I will stay in that like quarantine zone and just stay there. Like this is my punishment, but I'll own it. And like I get it. Like he gets why everyone wanted him to not pilot an Ava and all this stuff, and he was willing to accept his punishment because he was like, I caused all this, this community to form and all that, sure, but I don't need to do anything right now. So so this marks a huge growth with Shinji's character, and the moment that you see this shift is when we start seeing Gendo more, and we started seeing another, and this is where the 3.0 part of the story kind of shows up. So they're going after Gendo to stop him from succeeding in his instrumentality project. And this is kind of where we actually see what Gendo wanted to do, where he wanted to mend the reality with fantasy, fiction and nonfiction, all this stuff. He wants to meld together. And this is kind of where I initially thought. So they showed the scene where they show this fictional atom, or the fictional angel. I can't remember the name they called this thing. That was black. It became white, and then it kind of comes out of the crucifixion. And I thought for a second that they just took footage from End of Ava and just kind of put it in this movie, but I think it's the same. I think it's new footage and not really related, but it kind of plays the same way as End of Ava's scene where that thing kind of like comes out of the crucifixion, and through that you see a a real life depiction of Ayanami showing up instead of the animated white giant thing you see in the End of Ava. It's like a real person, which is kind of funny because it says that's the fantasy, that's not real, but reality is the anime world, which I thought was kind of funny. It's just hilarious to me that's how it is. I love when some shows do that. So he does all this explaining that he just wanted to see his wife again. And that's obviously like his main motivation. Even in the show, that's what he wanted to do. And surprisingly, so there's been this long-standing theory that the rebuilds are just the recreation of the show. Like it's a sequel, and it's been a debate with the Ava community. And I feel like this movie doesn't still. I don't think this movie really confirms or denies any of it, but I do think that there's more reason to believe this is a sequel because it kind of goes out of its way. It literally goes out of its way to make Neon Genesis Ava references. It does more to it shows more. It even shows like the logo and some flashing images of it. But even before that, and I'm sorry if this is going out of order. This is totally not scripted, so bear with me. Even before that, when Misato confronts and there's this clever bit that I loved. So in End of Ava, Ritsuko shows up. I think to seemingly kill Gendo, but instead it's Gendo that shoots her at the end. And in this, they inverted that where it's Ritsuko who shoots Gendo this time around. Like it's shown the same kind of intensity, but it's like okay, we're gonna inverse it. And this is where I feel like this movie really starts to hit it. Everything in this movie hits the same notes, the same beat for beat that the show hits, but it inverts everything. Everything is flipped. And I think that is so it feels so smart about it. Like it doesn't feel like it doesn't even feel intentional almost. Like it kind of plays the line of intentional inversing to like, okay, maybe this is just a happy coincidence that you can come to your own conclusion. But it feels so well put together. And even with the community scene, like I've said this before, like I don't like when shows or movies just kind of parade references and callbacks, like a parade, like, oh look, remember that, remember that, remember that. This actually feels like it's more intentional. Like it was intentional to bring Toji back. It's like it was supposed to make you feel like, whoa, a Toji? Like it felt more of like a reference, but it also felt more of like a story beat. Like you're supposed to see these characters again because, as I said, that part hits the same notes that Rebuild One, hit, and this kind of continues that, and it just feels like it's hitting these notes of the final climax of the ending of the show. So you see that Gendo explains the whole purpose of these impacts and what happens with these impacts. Like first it was purifying the oceans, then it was purifying the land, and that's what you saw with why everything was red in 3.3 and all this stuff. And then the wandering giants were just the purification of man or whatever. So that goes on. There's a little bit explanation with Asuka's character as well. And the movie series, like I kind of complain about in Rebuild 2 that everything feels crammed and doesn't have enough room to breathe. Like there's really no development. And 2 in a way also leads into this movie where you actually see some development with Asuka. It kind of goes into her character a little bit more with each stuff. They even tease a relationship with Mari and Asuka. Then Asuka becomes an angel, which is to try to stop the fourth impact. She's trying to like destroy the 13th angel, but she realizes that there's an AT field, and it's like, is my Ava afraid of this thing? Like, is that why it's generating this AT field? So she starts to become an angel herself. Like, she and this was also really clever. So she takes the eye patch off and she pulls out an entry plug out of her eye. And that to me is so interesting because it's an entry plug inside Asuka. Asuka's inside an entry plug inside an angel. So it's like this whole conga line of things. And the thing I thought was very interesting was she was piloting, I think she was piloting Unit 3, if I remember correctly. Uh, but then, no. Never mind, never mind. It was she pilots Unit 2. Never mind. I was dumb. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. But anyways, that aside, she pulls out an entry plug and she turns it to an angel. And Mari says like you're no longer human if you do that. Whatever. She also gets forcefully removed, to be a sacrifice for this whole impact to happen. Everything that Gendo wanted to happen was all hinged on Asuka's sacrifice, pretty much. Uh, so this is going on. They send Shinji in Unit 1. Of all things, Unit 1 comes back and gets reactivated. And it's also shown that his entry rate wasn't 0. It was close to 0, which means it was infinite. Which is kind of funny to me because I felt like that was like this is a thing a lot of anime does to the main character. Like, oh, the main character is so special, like he could do anything perfectly and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of felt like that was kind of like a thing with the Shinji of this. Like he's infinite. But he has this infinite sync rate. He gets into his Unit 1 and he starts confronting his father. And this was a thing that was an ongoing theme, even within the show, where people were telling him you have to confront your dad. You have to like, stand up for yourself. And, like your dad is doing this stuff and you can't always be afraid of him. You have to like step up to him. And this movie kind of builds up this uh fight. And like Ano, he just screws over your expectation. It builds up this whole fight. They have this fight where they're going through these, and I love this fight scene, by the way. I love that they go through all of these areas of the show. Like you see the city that the movie started in, Misato's apartment, the classroom, all these places you've seen. And Gendo specifically calls up before the fight scene even starts that, like, we're just getting in the same place. We're just gonna have to talk until this happens. And Shinji's like, I don't give a fuck, fuck it. And he starts fighting. He's like, guess we're taking the long way. So as this fight's going on, Shinji starts to realize that both Unit 13 and Unit 1 are fighting 1-to-1. Like, they're doing the same shit, so it's not going anywhere. The fight's literally not going anywhere. There's no damage. Like sure, like, Gendo's like throwing Shinji around, but Shinji's not hurt. Like, usually in a fight in Ava, or any show for that matter, when a fight happens, you do see damage. You see, like, in Ava, you would see like alerts, you would see like, oh, some damage, you would see like they would show Shinji in pain in terms of fighting, but they don't in this fight. They just throw him like throwing Shinji's Unit 1, and then Unit 1 just gets up like it's nothing, and then just the fight goes on, and it doesn't budge. The fight doesn't go anywhere. And Shinji just then realizes that both Unit 13 and Unit 1 are the same design. They both are parallel to each other. Unit 13 represents despair, and Unit 1 represents hope. And that is like the most like on and it fits everything if you really look at it, because it's told to you in Ava in general that Shinji's mom has always been inside Unit 1. Always. She's always been in there, in that unit. They don't know why she's in there. She's stuck in there, whatever. And then so that's that. And then, like, Gendo's in Unit 13, and he represents despair. And that's what Gendo feels. After losing his wife, he felt despair. He felt hopeless. He started isolating himself. So as they're discussing, this is really, literally where it hits the exact note. The exact fucking note as the movie and the show, where all these characters come out to talk to Shinji specifically, saying, you need to, like, accept your life. You need to, be okay with where you live and all this stuff. All that stuff, to form confidence in yourself and all that. And in this movie, it's not that. And they kind of, like, honestly, like, I remember, like, I was watching a review of Rebuild 1, like, last year or so, and this person was saying, like, in Rebuild 1, Shinji's not the same character in at all. Like, he was more gung-ho in comparison with the show. The show, like, Shinji kept wanting to run and not wanting to pilot throughout the whole show. In Rebuild 1, he still didn't want to pilot, but he was more, like, willing to. Like, he eventually just kind of was like, okay, I'll just pilot Unit 1. It is what it is, or whatever. So in this, it's more fitting for, and especially after all this stuff that he went through, he became more mature after all that. All that has happened. Like, the interaction he had with Rei in the village, like, where, again, it's an inverted situation where instead of Shinji reaching out to Rei, it's Rei reaching out to Shinji to get him, like, out of his funk. And through that, Shinji matured. He matured a lot. Like, there was a scene even before all this, again, where Asuka asks him, "Do you know why I wanted to punch you?" Like, and this was another callback to that, where she was force feeding him the ration, where he's like, "You don't even know why I tried to punch you." Uh, and Shinji responds in that later scene, "Yeah, you wanted to punch me because I couldn't decide. Like, you were in a position where I had to kill you or save you, and I didn't decide. Like, I couldn't choose, and that's what happened to you. Like, I couldn't decide, and I didn't pick a decision. And I didn't take responsibility, even after I didn't take any choice. I didn't take responsibility for it." So she was like, "Okay, well, I see you matured a little." So, uh, it's so fitting that instead of Gendo like, kind of like, I mean, Gendo also goes through an arc in the show. That's not to say that Gendo was a perfect character as well in the show, but uh it's a more different development. Gendo was more in the line of like in the end of Eva, he realizes that he was afraid to get closer to his son because he thought that he hated him. While with the movie, it still hits that note. Like it's still like afraid of like of his son hating him, but he was also afraid that uh he would see like he didn't want to see his wife inside his son. Like he was afraid to acknowledge that Shinji's also a product of his mom. Like obviously, I mean, he's his son. And he was afraid to acknowledge that, so he thought that would be better off for him to leave. While in the show is more about like he left because he was afraid of his son. Here he left because he thought it was the right thing to do, which also parallels with Misato's character. Misato has a son, from like that's a son between Kanji and Misato, and she was like, I can't be a mom. Like it'd be better off if she never knew about this unknowingly that uh she was kind of doing the same thing, and it also speaks volumes why Misato is the way that she was in 3.3 because they allude that she had this kid right at the end of 2. Like that's why like whatever happened and she didn't join Kanji wherever he was going because she was expecting. Uh so she kind of took this more Gendo design in her character, and no one knew why. Like I remember in 3.3, everyone was like, Why is Masato so like cold all of a sudden? Why is she wearing sunglasses? This is weird." And then in this movie, it's like, "Yeah, I'm a mom, but I don't want to be a mom, so better off if he doesn't know. So I'm gonna leave." So it's like she pretty much became Gendo Ikari, pretty much. But even then, at the end, I feel like she kind of regretted what she did, and I feel had she not died on that ship, like if the ending played out and she didn't have to sacrifice herself, she literally probably would have. I feel m- spent time with her son. I do feel like that would have happened because all that happened, but she decided that she had to make the sacrifice for the greater good. But as this is going on, it even goes as far. I was so happy. Okay, okay, I'm gonna tell you this. When we were going through Gendo's arc, I was giddy. Like I was on. I was like leaning forward to the TV. I was so happy because in the show's ending, there was all this stuff that happened with the animation and all this. So they kind of made it work by just defaulting to showing you doodles of like these characters that are not finished animations, and they made it work for the story. And obviously you would naturally think, right? Well, this is a rebuild movie. Ava has a little more popularity than it did when it ran and all this stuff. So there's at least some clout that Arnold can sway around to get the funding he needs. And yet he still decided he decided I'm gonna do this same shit. Cut to sketches of these characters and have Gendo narrate what he's feeling. Um, I think in the show Shinji repeats, "Don't run away, don't run away, don't run away," and that kind of stuff. Here Gendo repeats, Ayanami, 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 like just saying like and then like repeats Ray, 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 like that's not Ayanami, that's Ray, and all this stuff. And I loved it so much because it was just like, and that's kind of when my mind exploded. Like this is kind of where like my love for the movie, like literally the beginning of the movie, I was like, this movie's great. And then it does the thing with the village, great. It the deaths, the Ray's death scene was when I fucking loved it. That part was like, okay, when will this movie suck? When will it disappoint me? After that, it still went up. It kept going, and this is kind of where it just skyrocketed into like being a perfect movie for me, where it does a thing where it's like, yeah, we're gonna call back to this same feeling but we're gonna repurpose it, redesign it, and give it to you in a new way. Like they repackaged the same ending from the show, but they repackaged and gave it to you differently, and it was rewarding. Like, and, and and this is another theory. This is another, and this is why more people also discuss this. That why all of a sudden, because like Neon Genesis Ava has been such a hard property to get because of the licensing has been a nightmare. It went to like all these different productions that kind of closed and all this stuff. So it's very hard to kind of get all these licensings cleared up. And Netflix just by some miracle was able to get the licensing enough to like put it on their show. The only thing that they missed was Fly Me to the Moon. That's the only thing they couldn't get because it's harder. But they got the show and they put it up. I think I would like to say 2019. I would like to say that's when they put it up. Um, if not 2019, it was 2020. It was one of those 2 years. Um, that they put it up, and everyone's like thinking like, wait a second, they're putting this up, and the second they put that up, they more information suddenly, right? Suddenly started to trickle out about the last rebuild movie. So I don't necessarily know if this was the case. So you know how Rebuild 3 and 3.0 and 1.0 had this long gap, this long ass gap, right? Now, of course, I feel like part of that gap had to do with the animation and all that stuff. And Anno was also doing other movies as well, so I'm sure that took time as well. Sure, but what if, guys? Get this. Hear me out. Hear me out. Anno knew he wanted the ending to be this, and was like, I need to find a way to get the show viewable by any means. He was like, so I feel, and I don't know if this if because I don't think it was ever clear how Netflix obtained the rights to get Ava. I don't think it was ever clear. What if, guys? Anno pulled a lot of strings and worked his ass off to get that show onto Netflix by any means, like any means to get that on Netflix, because it's very suspicious or just weird, right? How it gets on Netflix and then all of a sudden information of rebuild 3.0 and 1.0 starts to like ramp up, and then like the only thing that delayed it after that was honestly the pandemic. And I said this even during that delay, and people were saying, "Oh, it's never going to come out because of this and that." They had a release date for theaters, and then they pushed it back because of the pandemic. The movie was done. Like that's the thing. Like the movie was done at that point. So like this, the pandemic delaying it was just like, yeah, the movie was already finished. They weren't working on it anymore because they had a theater date. The theater date had to change because, you know, uh, then they finally aired it, and now we're here. We're here, guys. So watching this ending, I really do think Ano at some point worked to get Ava up on Netflix or somewhere. I think what it was, honestly, he just wanted to be on something, and Netflix was probably the one service that was like, we want it. And I think there was also a debate that if the show did well on Netflix, that they were gonna do Rebuild. They're gonna do Rebuild 1, 2, and 3 and put that up on Netflix. And Netflix was not pleased with the performance, so they were just like, okay, and they passed on it. And then Amazon was like, Netflix, fuck you. We're gonna put Rebuilds up on here. And then there we go. Which I think Netflix fucked up. I really do think that they would have, because I think the issue with the show, and I talked about this in my videos when I talked about the show, was that there was a lot of controversy with the dubbing and the translations, because they wanted to get like newer actors to do the roles for the show. I don't think the dub is that bad, to be honest. I don't think it's great either, but I think it does the job well. I do like the Netflix dub of Gendo. I thought he did a good job playing this cold, distant guy. I've talked about this before. The dub for the rebuilds are good too. I like the voice actor of Gendo. He played the father of in Full Metal Alchemist. So he played a dad like that, so he's experienced. But uh, yeah, okay. So that theory aside, the ending was great. I loved that it was more focused on Gendo as a character. Like it was a twist I wasn't expecting because usually you would expect that okay, the rebuilds are gonna center around Shinji, and and everyone I feel was wondering how is it gonna end because they can't really give you the same ending, like the exact same ending from the show. It has to be different because it's a rebuild. And it does give you a new ending and it doesn't at the same time because as I said before, like it hits the same notes as the show's ending, but it's also new in the sense that it's not focused on Shinji. Shinji's not the it's not who they're focused because literally Ano knew like everyone knows Shinji's deal. They know this character and they did enough with him as well. Like as I said, like that scene where Rei dies, that whole part was Shinji's development, and that was kind of the tail end of his arc. Because that's why when you get to the ending, Shinji is the one going around getting these people out, like saving them. Like he saved his father. And later on, like Gendo understands, like I wasn't willing to accept the truth that yeah, my wife was in you, Shinji. Like I just wasn't willing to like comprehend that. I was like isolating myself from you because of that. And then it also reverses. So as I said in the show's ending, Gendo is the one saying that I isolated you because I was afraid that you would hate me or whatever. And here it's Shinji telling his dad, like, no, I isolated myself from you because I was afraid that you were gonna hate me and you were gonna love me. And there's a flashback, and this is dealing with Asuka, so it's you know, but there's a flashback where the father's holding Shinji, and Shinji cries and like wants his mom, and Gendo's like put aside. So Gendo kind of isolated himself from his son because he was like, yeah, he's just putting a wall between us, and like I think I'm just gonna like leave. Like it'd be better for him. And through Shinji's development through that community, as I said before, he realized that he can't go on in life isolating and separating himself from society. He decides like this isn't the way to live, and he was like, I need to talk to my dad about that. And once like and that was the thing that was told to him after he made that realization. The second he started opening up to people, I think it's the guy with the glasses. I can't remember his name. Tells Shinji, at some point you should just talk to your dad. You need to talk to him. Wait, no, or was it? Oh fuck. It was someone. Someone told Shinji, "You need to talk to your dad." I think you should have a talk with him, and he has that talk, and he's like, "Look, I knew you're my dad, and I isolated you from me because I didn't think you'd love me, and all this stuff." It's the same thing Gendo went through in the show, but this time it's Shinji that's going through that. Look, oh my god, dude, this just hit me too. Like during that like that sketchbook flashback, Gendo literally also talks about like how he. Oh my god, dude. So in the show, in the movie, you have that tape player, right? That Shinji's always listening to, and in the show, it's shown that he is listening to that soundtrack to isolate himself from the outside world. He's there on his own, and that's what Gendo did in the rebuild movies. Like that tape player was his. It was his tape player, and he was like telling Shinji, like, "Look, I know I wasn't like." I hated going out. I hated going to friends' houses. I hated being with other people. I hated being with my family. I hated all this stuff. I just took solace in learning, reading, playing piano, listening to music because I was able to isolate myself and feign indifference and all this stuff. Like it's the same development with Shinji, but was thrown into Gendo, and it was interesting because it also had this context with him having a wife and having a kid, having a family, and he was just like all this stuff. Like a guy who did not want to be a part of society or with anyone happens to get a wife, happens to get a kid, and was like, and he was trying. Like the fact he got a wife and he had a kid was Gendo at that point was trying. He tried to interact because Ayanami was the only person that got to him. And he was like, and when he tried to open up, like everything fucked up happened. His wife died, or whatever. Uh, his son was like pushing him away and all this stuff, and he was like, yeah, fine. I'll isolate myself. I don't need humanity. I don't need all this stuff. And that's why he was so willing to sell his humanity, because he when he tried he had all this stuff going for him, it was taken away from him. So like he started like and he saw that as validation of how he viewed the world before, where it's like, I should have just listened to my tape player and isolated myself, and that's how I should have, like, there was no betrayal. There was, like, that's why he described it that way. He loved the piano because if he hit a note, it would play on a well tightened piano. You hit that note, it's the note. There's no betrayal. There's no lie. There's nothing. Like, you get what you get. And with this, it's like he tried this lifestyle of just isolating himself, not reaching out to people, not talking, and then, like, once he tried that, he lost everything. Like, he lost it all. And then he was like, I should have just, stayed a recluse or whatever. And that's why he was driven to try to see his wife again. And he deluded himself in that quest. And Shinji had almost the same kind of development. However, like, through the actions of the beginning of this movie, he starts to see you're gonna lose. There's loss. There's always loss. There's always pain. There's always, like, you do decisions and there'll always be pain. Pain is a part of it. Like, and you can't walk away. Like, you make a decision. And I said earlier in this part of the video, you make a decision, and if it causes pain, you do something to remedy it, but you don't run away, and you don't see pain as like a consequence. You don't see it as like, oh, this proves that I shouldn't have done this thing or anything. So like Shinji knows this. Like he learned this through the loss of Karu, through the loss of that Ayanami. He knew at that point, yeah, like, there's gonna be loss. There's gonna be things that are gonna be taken away from you, and it's not right to sit there and say to yourself, this is life. This is, I shouldn't have done it. Like, yeah, I did this thing and it caused this other bad thing to happen. Oh, yeah, yeah, sure, this community happened, but a lot of people were suffering from this decision. And it's like, yeah, but you can amend that by doing something else. And Toji told Shinji this as well. Like, Toji told him, like, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a real doctor. I just took the role of one because no one knew what to do. Like, no one knew shit. I read up on it. I did my best to learn how to do it, but I'm no good doctor. I'm just playing a role, and people died, but I'm bearing the responsibility. I'm bearing the weight because I have to, and that's part of the job. Like, I'm still gonna save people. I'm still gonna do my role as a doctor, but I'm gonna have to also accept that there's gonna be people who die, and there might be families that hate me for that. Like, I might have made a mistake. I might have done something, but I still have a role. I still have to do this because no one else will. And it will be more devastating if I did nothing than to do something and have some loss along the way. But as long as I'm willing to bear the weight. Like, Toji is not um saying to ignore it. He's not telling Shinji, oh yeah, ignore the pain and suffering. Fuck that, It was more like, you're gonna have this pain and suffering all your life, but you have to accept that, and you have to, like, keep trying to do better each time. Like, see this as an opportunity to just keep trying and do stuff. Like, it might hurt. Bad things might happen. And as this goes on, Shinji tells it, like, conveys this to Gendo, like, yeah, you lost your family, but, like, this wasn't the right direction. Doing this is causing despair. Like, you're causing more people to suffer than what happened. Like, before, what happened was all he lost was a wife. Like, he just, like, one person in that situation. I mean, I think it was, well, there may have been more people now that I think about it, because I think it was an explosion or whatever, but it was an isolated incident in comparison to what Gendo was doing now. Like, if Gendo just accepted the loss that happened, and it was like, I'm gonna try to be a better person. I'll keep trying, and I'll accept the loss, and I'll just keep trying to improve what I did and all this stuff. That things would have been completely different, and that's why his Ava represents despair, because he saw it. And a lot of shows like Girl in the Gun kind of give you this theme of despair, like you go so far, and then when you hit to a point where you realize you can't go anywhere is when you feel despair, like you feel like you hit a wall and you can't break out. And Girl in the Gun, like, they break through that, but with this is more accepting, like Gendo met with despair and just kind of went with it instead of like going against it, and it showed the darkness of what happens if you just go with despair and you accept more losses than you could have prevented. So with that, Gendo realizes the error of his ways, and then he just kind of kind of accepts that and leaves. So with that, Shinji kind of helped him out to get out of his little hell, and it's so smart that they use the subway as that visual representation, that this is like, yeah, this is kind of where people go and face their demons. So yeah, Shinji gives him back his tape player as well. Like he tries to reach out to him with that. So Gendo leaves, and then we enter Asuka, which is, or do we go to Karu next? Well, I'll just go. I'm gonna talk about both of them anyway. So, we, so this was another thing I feel like a lot of people did not like, kind of complained, or at least brought up in the show, was that they didn't really do much with Asuka's character by the end. Even though I feel like the show just did enough with her. I thought that it was fine. I didn't think we needed any more with her in the show. But this one, they also go into her character where she just wanted to find a place to fit in. Like, she always felt like that she was alone. She was a failure. Like Nerve just straight up rejected her application. Just said, yeah, she failed. Like, we're done. We're terminating this. But she kept trying. She kept pushing herself, and it was through her just trying to find a role for her to fit in. And through this, she does find a place, and that makes her okay. Like, I will say, like, this part, like, they try. I feel like that they saw that feedback a little bit, and they try to remedy it. It does enough. It does as much development as the show does, so it's not bad. It just kind of like, it's like, okay, like, she always felt alone, and that's why like, no one patted her head, no one gave her compliments, like, and that's kind of fueled her hatred for Shinji. Like, and this is another inverse of the development of Asuka and Shinji in the show, where Asuka kind of belittles Shinji for wanting to be given all these compliments and sympathy. She still does that in the movie, but it's also because she never got sympathy herself. Like, no one told her good job, no one told her you did good, or anything. It was always like, you failed, you're not doing good enough, you need to work harder, and all this stuff. Like, it was all this, but no one told her, you know you did good. No one told her that, so it made her feel more alone than ever. So after she realizes that there was a person there that was supporting her, that wanted to support her, and that got her out of that funk as well. So then it moved, and like, that's why also, like, the representation of her was in a tube full of clones, pretty much. I don't know if like, I know that, like, it's always been like all clones of Ray and all that, but I don't know if for this particular scene, I have to look at it again. If it was clones of Oscar or just clones of Ray, and then it just had one Oscar in a tube, trying to fit in, I guess. But uh, she starts seeing herself as just another expendable body, and then through all this intervention with Shinji, she breaks out of it, and then it goes to Kaoru, which I honestly like. I kind of get it. Like, they kind of talk about how Kaoru was Colonel Nagisa. I don't. I kind of don't get. I kind of miss the relevance, because they had him like pair up with with Kaji, and I'll be honest, like, that's probably the one thing I probably would have to rewatch the rebuild movies to truly understand, because I feel that was the one reference that kind of went over my head. I I could only assume that that maybe like Karu was like a reincarnation kind of deal with Colonel Nagisa. Like he was just another like, you know, he was that person at one point in his life, and then he became Karu throughout, and that's what he became, kind of like Mari. Because there was this other theory I remember hearing, that there's a picture with baby Shinji that had his mom there holding baby Shinji, and there was a girl with glasses that's there, and people were saying, dude, that's Mari. That's Mari. That has to be her." And people were saying like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense because Shinji's also there." But 3.3 also talks about the curse of the Avas, where your body stays in age. Like you're in this unit, and you remain that age. Like you age naturally, sure, but you stay that age. And then you see with Mari, like they show like, and this one, I'll be honest, I did not pick up on it until I watched Mega 64 spoiler cast on 3.3. I think they also did a spoiler cast on 2.2, I'd like to say, but they mention Mari Zeva had all this food and junk in the pilot seat, pretty much. Like it looked like that she was living there for a long time, and I guess like, that was like kind of a hint that, yeah, this is the person in the photo. She was the first to get to see the curse of the Avas, pretty much. So that's why she stayed the same, because she meets with Futsuki again. Gonna butcher that guy's name, and he's just like, he calls her by her real name, and she's like, "Oh, I've never been called that in so long." So I really, really like that they did, acknowledge that she was the person in the photo in such a very, very subtle way. Like it wasn't in a very like obvious way. It is a good job, kind of like saying it and all that kind of stuff. So that was really sweet. I do like that it tied into that as well. That's why I thought the Karu thing was probably that kind of deal, because of that. But even that said, I did like that by the end of Karu, it was just like, you just were sad and you just wanted to see happiness in someone else. That's why you focus so much on Shinji's happiness, is because of that. So I do like that it kind of explains why Karu was so attracted to Shinji, that he just wanted to see him happy. So I do like that it goes into that as well. And then we see the original. I believe it's. Well, no, it must have been the second Ray that Shinji met, because I think there was the first one died, and then he saw the new one in Rebuild 2, I think. And then, yeah, it had to be Rebuild 2, and then he saved her, and and no one knew who was piloting Unit 1, because Unit 1 was repurposed to be though I'm gonna butcher this name too. It's like the Wunder core. Like Unit 1 was used to power that thing. And then it's revealed that she was piloting it the whole time. She was there. That's why like her hair is like super long, because like she never left the core. So she was there when Shiji wanted to pilot Unit 1, and through that, like, that Ray didn't know what she wanted to do, and it was kind of and Shinji tells her, "Well, there was another one of you that found a village, and she was happy," and which was interesting, because like when you see her finally in this portion of the movie, she's holding like a wooden doll, and she's like, "What is this? Like, what do you want me to do?" Like she's very confused, and Shinji tells her like, "You should just live. Like another you found worth and value in working, uh being with people, socializing, like all this stuff." And and this is where the shit just hits the fan, as far as like as Ava nuts are concerned. So like I almost said Neo. Whoops, that's the wrong show. Ray says like, "Well, you want to live in a world without Ava?" And he's like, "Yeah," and all that stuff. That as that conversation is going, it starts playing a reel, literally a reel, like a film reel of the original show. old ass animation, the old logo, everything. Just starts throwing it out. And it was just like, oh shit. And she's like, Neon Genesis? Evangelion is like, yeah, start your own show. Not your own show, like, and all this stuff. Like, because like Ray's asking him, like, what are you gonna do? And Shinji just tells her straight up, like, we could do a new thing, like new people, new lives, everything's gonna be new. There will not be any Avas. This is gonna be a world with no Avas, and this is why I think this is a perfect movie. Unlike Kojima, where he didn't want to do MGS4 and he was kind of forced to do it because of all this bullshit, and that movie had that game had a happy ending and all that fucking bullshit and all that stuff, and there were still Metal Gear games after it. Kojima sucked at that. He couldn't accept it. Whatever, fuck it. Whatever. He had to be forced out to stop making Metal Gear games. Okay, Ano, being the Chad that he is, was like, it's that scene literally was Ano telling the viewer to their face, I am done with Ava. There will never be anything else. It's done. Everything after will be new. New characters, no Avas, new stories. Like, he literally might as well told the viewer, don't bother thinking. There won't be any more shit. We're done. Like, because like people keep thinking that like the end. Oh my god! Technically, End of Ava was just pretty much Ano just begrudgingly making an ending for fans. But even then, like End of Ava was a movie he wanted to make as well. Like he made it his own, and that's why it ended the way that it did. And this time, it was like it was it was kind of like Ano told the viewer, like, yeah, you know what, End of Ava was this, and look, I'm gonna do these rebuilds, but I'm gonna like want to make it this time around, and I'm gonna make it the way that I envision. Like it was almost, it was kind of almost like this was the Ava he wanted to make if he could, like if he could like hop into a time machine and or given the chance to redo the show, this is what he would have done. And oh god, oh so yeah oh my god, dude, this is melting my brain. I'm so glad I decided to do this video right after watching the movie. As I said before, this movie is about accepting the loss and accepting your decisions that might have caused pain and all this stuff. This movie ends pretty much like as if like Anno wanted to make these rebuilds, and this was like as I said, like this was like the Ava he wanted to make. But instead of saying like, yeah, this is the Ava I wanted, we can ignore the other stuff. I mean that can exist on its own, but this will be its own thing, and this will be the thing I wanted to make. So this will be like here, and then this could be over there. And instead of that, to go along with the theme of the movie, Ano just tells the viewer like all this, like, yeah, this will be the next thing, this is the end. But it's also kind of acknowledging, yeah, I did this show, and this is kind of a continuation of it. Like it kind of connects to it. Like it literally calls it out. Like it's like, look at this. Like it's not hiding it. Like it's Ano accepting the pain of the show. Like it's like this movie, like people are expecting either, I feel like, and I think this is also kind of like on purpose too, because like End of Ava, everyone pretty much dies. I think the only two characters that you could argue are alive would be Shinji and Asuka. But even though you could argue that maybe just Shinji, or maybe they both dead, whatever. But here, it's a little more ambiguous on the optimistic side, where it's like, you see the scene, and they're theoretically leaving this stuff, and Shinji's theoretically saving them. Are they alive? Is Shinji like, you're alive, you're not dead? Like, because like, yeah, Gendo didn't technically die because he was still doing shit. So did he live? Is he alive? Who knows? Is Asuka alive? I mean, they don't really tell it. Like the movie doesn't tell you Asuka died. It was like, you need to save her. Go save her, and she's like, okay, and then he saves her. So it's like, so did Asuka die? Like, so she had to be alive, right? And then with Kaoru, like Kaoru died, but it's like, is he alive? No, who knows? Like all this stuff is going on, and it's like and it's literally the dude. Like it's it's as I said, like this the inverse that this movie does isn't cheap, and it's not like obvious. Because I'm just realizing just now that I'm talking about it out loud. There's a scene in End of Ava where everyone turns into juice. Like everyone dies. Like they all explode to LCL. Here, instead of everyone exploding to LCL, everyone's coming back to life. Instead, it's the opposite. So this ending was so much of like nods and like nudges to like his other work, and I just love that this is a movie that he made that literally just does all this stuff in service of the story and the characters, but also in service to himself and to the viewer. Like, you know, I think a lot of people mention how the other Ava shit is therapeutic and all this stuff because it goes into all this like headspace shit. This movie does it so well. Like, you could argue that what makes the show's ending work so well was that it was also there was also a show thought piece at the end, and then they did End of Ava that kind of contextualized what was going on, and that also was a thoughtful piece. So people were nervous, rightfully so, that this movie isn't going to do that. It's not going to do a good job. Like it's going to have to service the plot, and then it's going to have to service this like. And if Anna tries to do this headspace shit, it's not going to like pace very well. But here we are. He fucking found a way. He found a way to incorporate everything that the show did, and it was so therapeutic and cathartic. I don't know if cathartic is the right word, but it was therapeutic to sit there and be like, "Holy shit, dude!" Like I really, really loved all this did at the ending, and even after that little speech he had with uh Ray, he goes. You see the subway station. You don't see a good image of it, but you can suspect that is that Shinji, the little guy, and then you see across the platform. You see uh Kaoru with Ray. You see Asuka. You see all these other characters, and I think they've aged. I believe that they aged. They aged them up. Yeah, they did. And then you see Shinji, and Shinji is with Mari. They're a couple, which I feel someone would be pissed because the show does show Asuka and Mari to be lovey-dovey, and then it just has Shinji and Mari just like, yeah, these two are a couple. It's like, oh, okay, like I'm sure someone's gonna be mad about that, but I kind of like that twist at the end, and then it just shows them running off, and that's how it ends. And it was such a nice ending, like, and even slightly before that, I kind of skipped over this. Uh, It still does. It showed the keyframes, the cell art of Mario showing him diving into the water, and then it just cuts to being animated, which I love. I love that he also did that, where he did that sketch sequence with Gendo, and then he did like, okay, here's the keyframes of this. Look at this. It's not finished, but look at this, and then it goes to finished animation for the rest of the movie, and then it cuts to like a hybrid of like live action and anime people running in the street. So I guess that is to show that through what Gendo did, because Gendo, if you remember, guys, he merged fantasy with reality. So that's why, like, with the scene where they're running out of the subway station, it was real locations with anime people running. The other cool thing that was really, oh fuck, I just had it and lost it now. Oh my god, I literally just had it on the top of my head. Mari, Asuka. Oh, this is gonna bug me. Because I know the second I stop recording, I'm gonna be like, oh, I should have said this, and uh oh, okay, now I remember. Oh my god. So as like Shinji's leaving and like he's like, look, I'm gonna stay behind. After he talks to Ray, he's like, I'm gonna stay behind and finish the job and just kind of like do this. He gets forced out of Unit 1, and as he's leaving, he sees his mom for the like. First, he says, is that Ray? And then he's like, realizes, no, it's not. It's Mother. Like he sees that it's finally her. Like he finally sees his mom after never seeing her, for so long. He finally sees her, and he understands what his dad was trying to do because the unit of despair took the form of his dad. Like so, it was because Unit 13 comes like kind of like caresses Unit 1, and you see that's Gendo. Gendo's coming, like then flashes the Gendo like hugging his wife, and the wife just kills both of them, and they both die. And as Shinji's leaving, he's like, "I get it now. I get what you were trying to do this whole time, and all this stuff to see this, not knowing that my mom was in me," which also ties into why Unit 1 only allowed Shinji to pilot it because he had his mom inside him. Like, that's the point. So there you go. So that was the my on the spot review special on Ava 3.0 plus 1.0. It was a fun movie. I love this movie. I really, really, really couldn't find a thing I disliked about it. I could probably nitpick it if I really, really wanted to, but the overall experience was so satisfying. Like, I'm honestly gonna watch it again. Like, I could definitely watch this movie again and then watch it in the context of everything. It is such a good movie. I really absolutely loved it. If you have Prime, I I would recommend watching the rebuild movies. I only wish this isn't really a criticism on the movie, but I really wish you could buy this movie. Like I get that all these streaming services want people to pay to buy into the subscription service, but they should sell that on the library. Like you can have access to all this library, with a membership, or you could buy these individually because you were like look at Game Pass. Game Pass is a service you pay a monthly fee, and you have a huge library to pull from. Versus if you don't have Game Pass, yeah, you could buy these games, but like you're buying them individually at like a market price. And I just wish they did that for Amazon shit. Now I don't know necessarily if like maybe it'll be like Prime, it'll be on Prime forever, but it'll be streamed exclusively on Prime for like a week or two or whatever, and then it'll be you could buy it later, or you get to stream it if you have the Prime sub. But I do hope you could buy it in the future because I just don't. I feel this way with everything. Like everything that is streamed, like on HBO and all stuff, you should be able to buy it. Like I just don't like the idea that you can only watch stuff if you subscribe to it. You should be able to buy a physical copy. I don't know. I don't like this. You have to sub to get it. So that's the only negative, but that's more on the state of streaming services than the movie itself. I don't blame the movie for this. I blame streaming. Damn it! But I'm glad Amazon got the movie so that way we could watch it because otherwise I don't know how this movie would have been released because of how everything is. But so that was it. Thank you for watching this long ass on the spot review. I had a lot to say about it, and I really wanted to kind of put my thoughts out there as unscripted as possible. But I think that's kind of the Ava experience. So I would like to ask you guys if those of you who stayed around for the spoilers, do not comment spoilers. If you do, just at least find a way to like hide them. Like I know you could like at some point say see more, just do that at least. If I see spoilers, I will do my best to delete them. I don't want people to spoil. I have already put the warning in the beginning of this movie. I did all that, so just saying. I hope if you want to comment, feel free. You post your thoughts. Just make sure you find a way to tag your spoilers. Okay, so that way no one can do that. I will have my Discord server in the description below. I am going to make a Ava spoiler chat section in the Discord. So feel free to join that, and if you want to talk, you could talk there. Until don't talk about it until it's live, obviously. So I'll do an announcement for that once I make that channel open. But yeah, if you want, as I said, if you want to discuss just other stuff like that's not spoiler, feel free. Comment your thoughts. Do you like the movie or whatever? But if you are gonna spoil, please tag it. Thank you for watching this very long video. If you made it this far, uh, hashtag hashtag unit 10. Hashtag unit 10. All right. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.